Thank you. Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It was a privilege to second this motion that was brought to the chamber by the member for Cornwall, and I do appreciate that she has raised this. And I'm sure, as a new member or recently new member, you'll have the National Stroke Foundation knocking on your door at some stage, which they did when I first became the member for Swan back in 2007. At that stage, they were working from a very small office in the back of in the bowels of Charlie Gardner Hospital, and they had one little office and one person. They were unfunded, and but since have become, I guess, part of the national identity that people being made aware of Stroke Awareness Week and stroke around Australia. It's also interesting to note that this is timely, as unfortunately on Saturday my mother-in-law suffered a massive stroke, and my wife Cheryl is now in Melbourne by her bedside looking after her, or sitting with her to comfort her and be with her, hopefully, and she will get through that particular episode. But I'd like to thank the people, the doctors and the nurses at Austin Hospital who are looking after her and doing a magnificent job. And I'm sure from all my colleagues in the Parliament here, they wish Cheryl and her family the best. But it is a timely reminder that stroke does affect 1 in 6 people, and I guess examples like that remind us all that we have to be vigilant and careful and make sure that we make as much out of National Stroke Week that we can. Mr Deputy Speaker, not giving a personal medical history, but at one stage in my life you might believe that I was, you might not believe, but I was a smoker. But back in 2002, after visiting my GP and deciding to give cigarettes away, my doctor put me onto some Cardia, which he said was, and I said, "What are you giving me these for?" And he said, "Well, these are to help you prevent having a stroke." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, you've got a history of stroke in your family," which I do have. And I said, "Well, why didn't you give them to me before?" And he said, "Well, if you're silly enough to smoke, I wasn't going to give you something that was going to be a negative effect." So it's a timely reminder again that our health is up to ourselves, our self-responsibility and self-determination in regards to looking after how many times we visit the doctor. I visited my doctor last week and had another check-up in between sitting weeks of Parliament. But it reminds us all that how important that National Stroke is. I have an office staff member who woke up in the middle of the night and found himself slurring, and got his wife to take him to hospital, and he'd had a mini stroke. My brother recently woke up at 3 in the morning last year and recognised the symptoms because our family has a history, and he also got up and took himself to the hospital, or got his daughter to take him to the hospital, and immediately was able to recover from that. Had to have 2 operations on his veins in his neck, which is apparently a highly dangerous operation, and to clear out the 90% blockages that he had in his veins in his neck. So stroke is something that we can prevent by carefully looking after our own health. And it's interesting to note that they've talked about the symptoms, and as we said, this Stroke Week takes place from the 12th to the 18th of September 2016. It seeks to raise awareness about the need to prevent stroke in Australia, encourages all Australians to understand the symptoms of stroke, and encourages healthy lifestyle choices and regular checkups. Stroke remains one of Australia's biggest killers and a leading cause of disability, killing more women than breast cancer and more men than prostate cancer, as we heard from the other speakers as well. And as we said, according to the Stroke Foundation, 1 in 6 people will have a stroke in their lifetime. I'm not sure how many people here know, but I know of immediately 6 people I know who have had strokes, so it's probably the 6 degrees of separation again, that you know more and more people as we get older who have received or had a stroke. Well, I'm in the category after being in Parliament with the member for Moreton for 7 years, and the pressure I've been under from him. I could be a big candidate for a stroke, but don't take that personally, member for Moreton. Mr Deputy Speaker, a stroke happens when the supply of blood to the brain is suddenly interrupted. Blood may stop moving through the artery because of a clot or a plaque, or even because the artery is broken or burst. When the blood stops flowing, the brain doesn't get oxygen and the brain cells in the area die. While some cause temporary disability, others cause permanent damage, and often strokes can be fatal. Some symptoms may last up to 24 hours and others can disappear within seconds. The Stroke Foundation notes the longer a stroke remains untreated, the greater the chance of stroke-related brain damage. Mr Deputy Speaker, I again applaud the member for Cornwall for bringing this to the chamber, and advise or ask that all Australians make sure that they make themselves aware of the National Stroke Week. Thank you.